Close your eyes for a second and picture this. Everything you've ever wanted, every goal, every dream, already accomplished. You can see it, you can feel it. Now open your eyes. That image you saw, that's where it starts. That's the seed. Because nothing, and I mean nothing, has ever been created in this world without first being imagined. Before the skyscrapers, there were sketches. Before the billion-dollar businesses, there were back of the napkin ideas. Before the healing, the transformation, the victory, there was a vision. Imagination is the birthplace of all achievement. You see, your mind is a simulator. It can run scenarios, craft outcomes, and feel results before they ever arrive. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. That's not motivational fluff. That's neuroscience. When you imagine powerfully and repeatedly, you begin to build new neural patterns. You begin to become what you consistently rehearse. Think about elite athletes, the best in the world. They're not just training their bodies, they're training their imagination. They see the ball going through the hoop. They feel the finish line tape hitting their chest. And because they've experienced it in their mind 1,000 times, when the moment comes, it feels familiar. The world thinks it's magic. It's not. It's mastery of imagination. But here's what most people do wrong. They use their imagination against themselves. They imagine everything that could go wrong. They rehearse failure. They play the same painful memory over and over and call it reality. That's not reality. That's destructive visualization. You have a choice. You can let imagination be the architect of your future or the warden of your fear. You can use it to break out of limits or to chain yourself inside them. The same power that builds dreams can also build excuses. It's all about direction. Who's steering the wheel? Now I want you to understand something deeper. When pain hits, most people retreat. But if you activate imagination in that moment, you can begin to reframe it. What if this wasn't happening to you but for you? What if the pain wasn't the end but the beginning? You can start to craft meaning out of the suffering. And meaning is what transforms victims into victors. You don't escape reality through imagination, you reshape it. You step into possibility, and possibility is where change lives. Let me be blunt with you. If you don't choose to direct your imagination, the world will do it for you. Advertisers, social media, friends, even your own fears, they'll start feeding images into your mind until you're no longer the author of your own life. That's why imagination isn't some fluffy artistic tool. It's a survival skill, a performance weapon, success amplifier. And the best part, it's free, it's already inside you, but like any muscle, it grows with use. So imagine BIG, imagine vividly, imagine relentlessly, not someday, but today. Because if you can imagine it, you can feel it. If you can feel it, you can believe it. And if you can believe it, you can create it. Imagination is not a luxury, it's the engine of everything. Everything you will ever build in your life. Every breakthrough, every success, every solution starts with one thing, the invisible power of imagination. Before you hold it in your hands, you must first hold it in your mind. Imagination is the silent architect working behind the scenes of every great achievement. People often talk about goals, hustle, and strategy. And yes, all that matters, but none of it begins until imagination steps in, because you cannot build what you cannot first see. You cannot chase what you haven't dared to visualize. You certainly cannot become what your mind is too afraid to explore. If you look around everything in your current life, your relationships, your career, your habits, they are all the result of the mental images you've consistently believed. If you imagined you were unworthy, you settled. If you imagined life was too hard, you held back. But if you ever imagined something more, something greater, something bold, that's when the tide began to shift. That's the moment you started to create from the inside out, because nothing truly changes until the blueprint in your mind changes first. What separates people who rise from those who stay stuck is not intelligence or talent, it's vision. It's the ability to close your eyes and see something more than what is, to see possibility in the face of difficulty, to design a different future when the present feels suffocating. This power doesn't come from outside. It's not something handed to you, it's something you activate. And the tool to activate is imagination. It's not some childish fantasy, it's a tool of mental construction. It's how every inventor, every leader, every world changer began. Not with the product, but with the picture. Not with the money, but with the mindset. Imagination is where the dream takes its first breath. It's where innovation is born. But it goes even deeper than that. It's your internal permission slip. Most people wait for someone to give them permission to be great. They wait for circumstances to line up, for doors to open, for signs to appear. But the truth is, the door is in your head. It's imagined first. You open it when you allow yourself to think bigger than your current reality. And once your mind expands to new images, it cannot shrink back. You start to believe that maybe, just maybe, life you've been waiting for isn't coming. It's being built, and it starts with your thoughts. Think about children. They imagine without limits. They believe they can be astronauts and superheroes all in the same week. Why? Because they haven't yet been conditioned to fear failure. Their imagination is raw, alive, and pure. Now what happens as we grow? Society, school, disappointment, they start to crush that instinct. We learn to imagine less. We learn to play it safe. We get taught to be realistic. But here's the problem with that. Realism kills potential. You weren't born to think in straight lines. You were born to create angles nobody's ever seen. When you stop using your imagination, your life starts to operate on default. You stop dreaming and you start surviving. You lose direction and settle into repetition. Days blur, energy fades. But the second you ignite your inner vision, again, it's like oxygen rushing into your soul. You start to wake up with purpose. Your mind starts solving problems before they appear. You begin acting like the person you imagined, not the one your past tried to define. So if you feel stuck right now, it's not because you lack talent. It's because you've stopped imagining what's possible. You've stopped giving yourself permission to go there in your mind. But that can change in an instant. The moment you decide to re-engage your imagination with intention, with intensity, with clarity, everything begins to shift. You start to rewire not just how you think, but what you expect. You become more than reactive, you become creative, and creation is power. Imagination is not just about dreaming, it's about designing. Every great life is designed before it's lived. So ask yourself, what are you imagining right now? Are you imagining more problems, more fear, more of the same? Or are you using your mind to stretch your future into something worth casing? Because whether you realize it or not, you are always building. The question is, are you building from fear or from vision? If you want to change your life, change the pictures you're holding in your head. Paint something worth pursuing, because once the blueprint changes, the reality will follow. One of the most powerful truths you will ever learn is this: your brain doesn't know the difference between something you vividly imagine and something that actually happens. Think about that for a second, because once you understand the depth of this, it becomes a life-altering tool. Your mind responds to imagined experiences with the same emotional, chemical, neurological signals it would send if those events were happening in the real world. That means every single day, whether you're living the life you want or just rehearsing it in your mind, your nervous system is recording it as reality. This is why visualization isn't just a motivational tactic, it's mental training. Your body and your subconscious begin preparing you to live the reality. You consistently feed it. If you're constantly imagining failure, rejection, being broke, being ignored, guess what? Your body reacts with stress, anxiety, tension. It reinforces those feelings. Your posture changes. Your energy drops. Your confidence disappears. You start making choices from fear instead of power. You're literally training your mind and body to exist in a world that hasn't even happened, but you're living like it has. But here's the shift. The exact same mechanism works in the opposite direction. When you imagine success, freedom, strength, your brain starts to accept that as truth. It begins rewiring neural connections to support that new belief. Your physiology begins to reflect the energy of your vision. Your emotions begin aligning with the future you're imagining. And over time, you stop waiting for things to happen. You start becoming someone who makes things happen because you've rehearsed it over and over, not just mentally, but emotionally and physically. You've made it feel real before it even shows up. This is why elite athletes, peak performers, and world-class leaders use visualization as a part of their daily routine. Not because it's positive thinking, but because it creates muscle memory in the mind. A sprinter will see the race in slow motion, feel every step, hear the roar of the crowd, and imagine the ribbon breaking across their chest, all before they even step on the track. So when race day comes, their body doesn't hesitate. Their mind isn't confused. It's already been there. Their nervous system says, I know this, I've done this, and that gives them an edge most people will never understand. This is not about fantasy. This is about preparation. This is about training your identity through imagined experience. It's about stepping into the version of yourself you're not yet living, but are ready to become. And the more detailed and consistent your imagination is, the faster your body, emotions, and belief systems begin to align with that vision. Here's the danger most people miss if you're not using this power consciously. It's being used against you unconsciously. Every time you rehearse worst-case scenarios, you're programming your brain for survival, not expansion. Every time you imagine people rejecting you, judging you, ignoring you, you reinforce a reality you don't want, but your mind starts believing it's already here. That's why some people sabotage opportunities before they even get a chance to grow into them. Their internal movie says, I can't handle this, and so they don't. They freeze, they pull back, they shrink. Not because the world stopped them, but because their imagination convinced them to stop themselves. If your brain believes what you consistently feed it, then the most powerful question you can ask yourself is this: what am I feeding it every day? You rehearsing your success or your failure? Are you imagining growth or regression? Are you telling your body that you are powerful, capable, and ready? Or are you imagining a reality where you are small, stuck, and scared? You have the ability to program your mind like a master. You can feed it the images, emotions, and outcomes you want to step into. You can sit in silence for 5 minutes a day, close your eyes, and rehearse winning, connecting, healing, building. Do it with so much detail that your brain begins to believe it's already happening. And then watch how your life begins to change, not because the outer world shifted, but because your inner world expanded. When you take control of your imagination, take control of your nervous system, you take control of your beliefs. And that becomes the fuel for your decisions, your behaviors, your outcomes. So remember this: your imagination is not entertainment, it's programming. You see in your mind shapes how you show up in the world. Feed it power, and you will live powerfully. There's one trait that separates the world's most successful individuals from the rest. It's this: they don't wait for results to believe in them. They imagine them into existence. Before the applause, before the success, the breakthrough, they see it. They rehearse it. They live it internally with so much clarity that eventually the world has no choice but to catch up. That's not luck, that's vision. And vision is a skill. The people at the top didn't stumble their way into success. They built it first in their mind. They programmed their nervous system to walk into a room with certainty. They conditioned their beliefs long before the world gave them validation. This is not something mystical. It's how human performance actually works. The most accomplished individuals don't let their environment dictate what they believe is possible. They do the opposite. They let their internal vision dictate how they interact with the environment. They project what they want, not react to what is. That's why, even when reality looks chaotic, they stay grounded. They've seen the finish line in their head already. They've already tasted the outcome. So they don't flinch when setbacks show up because in their mind, they're already there. Look closely at entrepreneurs who build billion-dollar companies, at elite athletes who dominate the game. Look at artists who create movements. Before they have the proof, they have the picture. That picture is their compass. It's not a vague daydream, it's a high-definition image. They imagine the audience standing, they imagine the product changing lives, they imagine the deal being closed. They don't just hope for success, they prepare for it emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And that preparation creates alignment, where their thoughts, energy, and actions start flowing toward the very thing they've already seen. The average person waits to believe until they see evidence. The most successful people do it backwards. They believe first, and the evidence starts appearing. Why? Because your belief system controls your behavior. When you believe you're already on your way, you take bold action. You don't hesitate. You operate with intention, and that's what creates results. It's not just strategy, it's internal certainty. Let's get real. How can you build something extraordinary if you've never even seen it in your own mind? You can't hit a target you haven't defined. You can't attract a future you haven't emotionally connected to. Success begins in the imagination, and imagination creates emotional ownership. The moment you imagine something so deeply that it moves you, you begin to own it. It becomes part of your identity, and identity drives everything. So many people are stuck not because they lack skill, but because they lack inner vision. They're waiting for someone else to show them the way, when in truth, the most powerful GPS they'll ever have is inside. It's the mind. And the most successful individuals, they use it like a precision instrument. They sit down, they close their eyes, they rehearse the future, they hear the conversations, they feel the success, they imagine who they have to become, and that image becomes their script for real life. It's not a one-time thing, it's a daily practice. Just like physical training builds muscle, mental rehearsal builds belief. You know what's crazy? Most people use the same power in reverse. They imagine failure, they play out worst-case scenarios, they rehearse being rejected, humiliated, overlooked. Their body listens, their confidence shrinks, their energy drops, their decisions become timid. So they end up creating exactly what they feared, not because it was destined, but because it was imagined so often that the body treated it like truth. You become what you believe. But even before that, you become what you imagine. So ask yourself, what future are you rehearsing? Are you waiting to believe once everything works out? Or are you brave enough to believe before anyone claps for you? Most successful people don't need the world to validate them. Their imagination already gave them the emotional experience. That's why they show up differently. That's why they bounce back faster. That's why they walk into rooms and make people feel something, because they've already seen who they are before anyone else did. You want to create lasting change in your life? Start by imagining outcomes so vividly, so intensely, so frequently that your mind treats them as inevitable. Make the vision so alive inside you that the outside world begins to bend toward it. That's not motivation, that's mastery. And it starts right here in the space between your ears. That's where your next level begins. Your limits aren't real until you decide they are. They're imagined first, accepted second, and lived third. That means the very things holding you back are not physical walls. They are mental ones. And the beautiful, full truth is that imagination has the power to knock every single one of them down. Because when you begin to imagine beyond your current circumstances, you begin to see past the boundaries you once believed were fixed. You stop accepting the story you were handed, and you begin to author a new one. The problem isn't that people are stuck. It's that they believe the lie that they have to stay stuck. Somewhere along the way, they accepted a definition of themselves that came from a moment of fear, a voice of doubt, or a season of struggle. That became the script. That became the frame of what was possible. And once the frame was built, they stopped looking beyond it. Here's the truth: imagination is the wrecking ball to every false boundary in your life. The moment you start imagining a new identity, a new standard, a new way of living, you weaken the very walls that once felt permanent. You weren't born with those limitations. You were taught them. You absorbed them. You inherited them from people who didn't know they could be free. So when you sit quietly and start seeing a different version of yourself, one who speaks with power, moves with confidence, acts with clarity, you're not just daydreaming, you're beginning to break the illusion of limitation. Because your brain starts to ask, what if this version is more true than the one I've been living? If this isn't fantasy but reality in the making, that question alone is dangerous to limitation. because the moment you allow that thought to breathe, you've opened the door to possibility. And possibility is the enemy of limitation. Limitations thrive in certainty, in you saying, this is just who I am, or this is just the way it is. But the second you imagine an alternative, a version of you that speaks up instead of staying silent, that acts instead of hesitates, that builds instead of waits, you start to dissolve the chains, you begin to challenge the program that's been running your life. People say things like, be realistic, as if imagination is some childish escape. Realism is just code for fear most of the time. What they call real is often just recycled pain accepted too many times. Being realistic is not noble if your reality is built on lies and limitation. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is reject realism and imagine something radically better. Imagination gives you access to a different frequency, one where you're no longer reacting to life, but shaping it, you begin to ask better questions. You stop focusing on what could go wrong and start designing what could go right. You stop asking, what if I fail, and start asking, what if I rise? That shift, that tiny mental pivot, starts a cascade. Your language changes. Your energy changes. Your decisions start flowing in the direction of what you see, not just what you've known. That's how people rewrite their lives. Not by luck, not by talent, but by imagining something bold, having the courage to move toward it even when it feels uncomfortable. And yes, it will be uncomfortable, because when you challenge your limitations, they push back, fear will speak louder, doubt will get clever. If you keep holding the image, if you keep rehearsing your freedom, your strength, your purpose, the old voice will weaken, and the new one will get stronger. This is why you must feed your imagination with better fuel. Stop replaying the past like it's a prophecy. Start projecting a future that excites you so much you can't help but grow into it. Surround yourself with people who don't just tolerate your imagination, but encourage it. Speak words that breathe life into your vision. Build an internal environment where your possibilities feel more real than your problems. The mind is either a prison or a platform, and you get to choose every single day which one you'll live in. You stay within the limits you didn't ask for? Or will you start imagining a life that breaks every rule you thought was written in stone? Because here's the truth, there are no rules, just stories. The most powerful story you'll ever tell is the one you imagine, then live. So don't ask if it's possible, ask if you can imagine it. And if you can, then it already is. Pain is one of the most powerful forces in the human experience. It can shape you, break you, harden you, or humble you. But the truth that most people never realize is this: pain by itself has no meaning. It's your imagination that gives it the story. It's your mind that decides what pain turns into. Some people, pain becomes a lifelong prison. For others, it becomes fuel. It becomes clarity. It becomes power. The difference isn't what happened. The difference is how they used what happened. And that comes down to imagination. You get hit by life. When you lose someone, when you fail, when you're betrayed, when you feel like everything is falling apart, you have two choices. You can relive it again and again, locking yourself into a cycle of suffering. You can step back and begin to reimagine the meaning of the pain. You can decide that this didn't come to destroy you, it came to awaken you. And that shift doesn't require anything outside of you. It begins in the theater of your mind. Pain tells a story, but you get to decide what kind of story it becomes. That's what makes imagination so powerful. You can take the most devastating experience and flip the frame. You can start to see how it shaped your strength, it refined your focus, how it stripped away your illusions. You can imagine how this very moment of darkness is preparing you for a light you couldn't have seen otherwise. And when you do that, pain starts to lose its grip on you. It doesn't disappear, but it no longer defines you. Think about it, how many people walk around wearing their wounds like permanent labels? Not good enough. People always leave. I'll never trust again. That's not the pain speaking anymore. That's the imagination reinforcing the wound. That's the mind replaying the same narrative until it becomes identity. Identity can be rewritten. You can sit with your pain, feel it fully, and still choose to tell a different story. You can close your eyes and imagine becoming someone stronger because of what happened, not in spite of it. This doesn't mean denying your emotions. This isn't about pretending it didn't hurt. You honor the pain, but you don't worship it. You don't give it the final say. You let it inform you, not imprison you. You use your imagination to find purpose in the pain, and purpose is what gives suffering an expiration date. The moment you see that the pain is part of a bigger picture, one that leads to growth, wisdom, and deeper capacity, you begin to rise. That rising starts long before your circumstances change. It starts when your perception changes. Most people think healing is about time, but real healing starts when you reimagine the event itself. When you look back and say, this didn't end me, this formed me, you start to see the people who hurt you as teachers, the moments that broke you as turning points, the silence you endured as space where resilience was born. That's imagination. That's not delusion. That's redemption. That's you refusing to let your story be written by pain alone. Imagination allows you to visit the future even while you're hurting in the present. It gives you a glimpse of what's possible, even when nothing around you looks promising. That future version of you, stronger, wiser, more grounded, that version starts to become real the moment you can see it, the moment you believe it exists on the other side of what you're feeling. That's when you stop asking and start asking, what now? Because pain no longer controls the narrative, vision does. You're not weak because you've been through pain. You're powerful because you've survived it. If you can imagine a reason to keep going, even a blurry one, you've already taken the first step out of suffering. You've started to repurpose your pain. That is the beginning of transformation. And it's all available to you right now inside your mind. So when pain shows up, don't just feel it. Face it with imagination. Ask, what can this create in me? Who can I become because of this? That's where healing begins. That's where freedom lives. Pain might visit you. It doesn't have to live with you. Not if you decide to see something greater than what hurt you. And you do that not with willpower, but with imagination, the most underrated weapon of the human spirit. Every single day, your mind is being influenced, shaped, programmed, conditioned, whether you realize it or not. If you are not actively directing your imagination, the world is doing it for you. And the truth is, most people don't even notice it happening. That's how subtle and dangerous it is. Because when you stop using your imagination intentionally, you don't just stop dreaming, you become a character in someone else's story. You start living inside someone else's idea of success, someone else's fear, someone else's limitation. And without even knowing it, you begin accepting a life that wasn't designed by you, but for you by a culture that doesn't always have your best future in mind. Look around, the world is constantly throwing images at you. Ads telling you what to buy, media telling you what to fear, influencers telling you what to chase. And if you're not awake, if you're not conscious, if you're not guarding your mental environment, you start absorbing it, you begin imagining the life they project instead of the life you were meant to live. Slowly your imagination becomes a mirror for the external world instead of a window into your internal power. You stop visualizing your dreams and you start visualizing distractions. You stop seeing who you could become and start seeing what you're missing. And that's how people lose themselves, not all at once. Thought by thought, image by image, belief by belief. The most dangerous thing isn't that people don't have dreams, it's that they forget they have the power to create them. They let the world shrink their imagination down to the size of a paycheck, title a scrolling screen, and when imagination shrinks, so does potential. Because you cannot live a life that your mind cannot first see. You cannot take action on a vision that was never allowed to form. And so people drift. They get up, go through the motions, and wonder why they feel disconnected. It's because the inner world has gone silent. And when your imagination goes silent, your soul starts to starve. But here's the truth, imagination isn't optional, it's essential. It's not just for artists or entrepreneurs, it's for anyone who wants to live life on their terms. Because imagination is how you take your power back. It's how you unplug from the noise and plug into your own vision. It's how you stop reacting and start designing. You don't need permission, you don't need the world to understand. You just need to decide that your mind is yours and it's no longer for rent. This is where intentionality comes in. You have to make imagination a daily discipline, not a once in a, well, fantasy, just like you brush your teeth, move your body, and eat to stay physically healthy. You must feed your imagination to stay mentally and emotionally alive. You carve out space to think about the life you actually want, the person you truly want to become, the contribution you're here to make. You close your eyes, shut the world out, and activate the part of you that dreams without fear. The more you do that, the more your inner voice starts getting louder than the noise around you. People talk about mindset, about beliefs, about confidence. But what's underneath all of that? Imagination. If you can't see yourself winning, if you can't picture yourself rising, changing, leading, healing, it won't matter how much potential you have, because you won't step into a version of life you've never mentally rehearsed. Your imagination is the internal GPS system. If you're not inputting your own destination, you're going to be taken somewhere random, or worse, somewhere chosen by someone else. And don't think for a second that other people aren't trying to influence your destination. It's full of agendas, some obvious, some hidden. And they're more than happy to plant thoughts in your mind to define what beauty is, what success is, what happiness should look like. But you weren't put to copy someone else's blueprint. You were born to build your own. And that starts by reclaiming the most sacred space you own, your imagination. So if your life feels off track right now, don't just change your actions, change what you're seeing. Take the steering wheel back from the noise. Don't let algorithms decide what inspires you. Don't let news headlines dictate what you fear. Don't let anyone, not even your past, decide what's possible for your future. If you don't use your imagination with purpose, someone else will use it for theirs. You have the pen, you have the canvas, you have the mind. The question is, are you using it, or are you letting it be used?